Manchester United are a very meek team. Any strong team is going to beat them. I'm a Man United fan. If you give me 10th next year, right now, I'll take it.
If Arsenal were to concede a 3-goal lead and go out of the Champions League, if they were to collapse, it would be one of the most embarrassing collapses of all time. The internet will literally collapse.
When they invest such huge amounts of money in people like Mickey Rourke, they're hoping that he is going to act according to type.
Every fella with a woman has been quaking in their boots whilst Usher's been in the capital of our country here. What's happening, guys? Welcome to this week's episode of Whisper It Loudly. I'm Jordan Jarrett-Bryan, joined by Hugh Woozencroft and Darren Lewis. Now, just before we get in today's podcast, a reminder to you guys, not only subscribe to the podcast, we need you to comment, share, support. It means a lot. It really helps us grow the podcast. So if you like the podcast, and I know that many of you guys do, because you tell me and you DM me, don't DM me, leave us a little comment. Do you agree with you? Do you agree with Jordan? Obviously, Darren talks a lot of nonsense, and you can just let us know. But just interact. It's a conversation. We're a community. Yeah. So, leave a little comment, leave a little like, share, and let's grow this thing. Yeah. So don't only subscribe, leave us a comment and a review. It really, really helps us a lot. Okay. On the pod this week, we're going to be talking about a few things. First of all, we'll kick off with some of the English teams in European action and the consequences that they may face should they exit Europe this week. We'll have a chat also about Usher and his antics in London. And Darren wants to ask the question, how far is too far in regards to bringing partners to these sorts of events? And we're going to chat in between both of those things about Big Brother as well. And, Darren's written a really good article this week about, the Mickey Rourke, who has kicked out of Big Brother, the consequences of that, but also on a wider scale, what purpose does watching 15 D-list celebrities in a house serve the public in 2025? Let's kick off, though, with the football chat. We spoke quite a lot about Spurs last week, so we'll come to Spurs in a bit. But Hugh, let me come to you first, and we'll kick off with Manchester United, because you've got an important second leg tie at home to Lyon. It's currently poised at 2-2. One of your strikers is out, so you're forced to put Rasmus Højlund back in. Midfield open like a summer's day. Lindelof is back in defense like it's 2021 or whatever year he was at his prime, if that was a prime. And there's a goalkeeping contest between Heaton and the goalkeeping coach as to who starts for this game. The season comes down to this game, Hugh. Are you optimistic? Because Lyon aren't great, but it's all or nothing for you guys. What are your thoughts going into this second leg?
Yeah, I'm not an optimist or a pessimist. The thing is, I don't want to say I'm not an optimist, because then people will say I'm going to be really pessimistic about it. It just is what it is. When it comes to Man United's game on Thursday night, I'll be there. And if it's an ugly 1-0 win, if it's the worst game you've ever seen, if Man United go through, that's all that matters. That's the reality of the situation they're in. In fact, it's the same throughout the entire Europa League. It doesn't matter if Manchester United play well or not. They just need to win it. Yeah, I mean, look, the defeat by Newcastle, it's the same old. Manchester United are a very meek team. Any strong team is going to beat them. Thankfully, they're in the Europa League. Again, ultimately, Manchester United even reaching next season's Champions League is really all about getting money in the Glazers' pockets and making sure, that money just goes towards paying off a debt. Let's be perfectly honest. Fans might think there's a bit of kudos to being in the Champions League. There's always this argument made that if you're in the Champions League, you'll recruit better players because players want to play in the Champions League. Man United are going to find it tough to recruit decent, very good players. They're going to find it tough because the club is a mess. The managers come in, and with respect, lots of people hold Ruben Amorim in high regard. He did a great job at Sporting Lisbon. His Man United team hasn't got going at all. That's the truth. They play Wolves at the weekend after the game in Europe. Wolves can go level on points with them. It's a team that we thought for most of the campaign was going to be heading to the Championship. So it's absolutely dire for Manchester United. So again, I should have probably said I am a pessimist given everything I've just said.
Yeah. I was thinking that as well, actually. Darren, we all know how bad Manchester United currently are. They do have a few injuries that make it even harder for them. Can you see them galvanizing a fight and a spirit and a cohesive system this week, this Thursday, to knock out Lyon, or do you genuinely fear that even an average Lyon side could come to Old Trafford and walk out, progressing to the next round of the Europa League?
Well, the first thing I've got to say, Jordan, is that we disrespect football a lot. Lyon, on average, they're winners of 9 of their last 12 games. They sit third in their domestic league. We deride football, French football so much, but PSG are the best, one of the best teams in Europe, certainly one of the most complete teams in Europe at the moment, even though they don't have what we would term an orthodox striker like a Haaland. And I just think that there is this widespread dismissal of Lyon and what they can come up against. Yes, Lacazette's still scoring goals for them. He's getting on a bit, but he's got 12 league goals for them in Ligue 1 at the moment. And he can certainly find a way through a mistake, a defence at Manchester United that has a mistake in it in every game. So if you're asking me, could I see United winning? Yes, I could. But could I see United losing? Yes, I could. You just don't know which Man United will turn up for this match.
Hold on.
But they are
what do you mean which
United of old.
Darren, stop there. What do you mean which Man United? What do you mean which Man
There's only
United?
one.
What are the two Man Uniteds? There's only one.
Well, but by that I mean, could it be the Man United, for example, that put Arsenal out of the FA Cup and turned up and put in a performance and surprised a lot of people? They do have that odd performance in their locker, but then they also have the kind of slapstick kamikaze shambles that we saw last weekend. And I expect to see Onana back in goal. I don't think you can have a situation where you're going to go from Onana to Bayendir to Tom Heaton as if it's X Factor. You've got to put somebody in and stick with them and give them the confidence to be able to keep going. You're a massive club. You're having a bit of a crisis at the moment, but you've got to stick with the players that you know and have the most experience. But I think we disrespect Lyon at our peril.
I'll stick with you, Darren, but Hugh, jump in as well. Is there any truck, do you think, in the idea that not being in Europe next season altogether actually might be a good thing for United? And, Hugh puts the argument forward of the financial benefits of being in the Champions League. But do United, and probably more so Amorim, could they benefit from the idea that if they just have, one game a week, he can implement his system. There's no pressure on having to have a big squad and rotate players. Do you think if they were to lose and miss out on Europe altogether, that could be a blessing in disguise?
No, United are a big club. They should be in Europe. All big clubs should be in Europe, particularly one the size of Manchester United. If you were to go to players and ask if they want to come to Manchester United, they'll ask, what European football do you play? And also, there is a little bit of naivety about the idea that they can have a wholesale clear out in the summer, because if you look at some of the biggest players who are on insane wages, high wages for other clubs, but the going rate for Manchester United players, they are not going to want to go to another club unless they get that kind of deal. So it's going to be a lot harder to get players out of Manchester United than a lot of people think. And so with that in mind, I think that they've got to be playing on a regular basis. So you can't just have one competition, because if you've got one competition, you get the players in that you want, you've got a big squad, you're going to have a lot of unhappy players if you don't have a lot of football to be playing next season.
You?
I understand the concept. I wouldn't be unhappy if Man United weren't in Europe from a fan perspective. Again, for me, the club is run in such a poor manner that any player has to seriously consider why they would join Manchester United. And that's the truth. And even what you've seen from Ruben Amorim's team so far, it's not like you can say, well, wow, this guy's he's clearly showing that he's going to turn this team around. Even this ragtag squad that isn't his group of players have been playing so well under him that once he gets his players in, the only way is up. it's not true. What we've seen so far, that it's more likely that Ruben Amorim will be gone if it continues next season then he'll be staying long term. So again, I think any real decent player is joining Manchester United because of the history of the club and the allure of playing for a giant football club with the global reach that it has. Ultimately and ultimately wages. And I think you'd be making that decision either way at the moment. I think the players that are in the ilk of Champions League is the only thing for me. That they're not going to be joining Manchester United right now. That's the truth. Man United don't even have the money to go out and truly spend to the level required to bring in top elite Champions League footballers. So in a weird way, not being in Europe might help them with their PR, because they can turn around to the fans and say, not being in Europe's meant that we haven't been able to get, those top elite talents. And that's why the likes of Delap and Gyökeres and Osimhen have decided to go elsewhere. So that could be an argument further down the line. It could also be a pretty strong argument to say, because we're not in Europe, we've got the opportunity to strip things back. We can have a smaller squad for a season. We can worry about, really increasing the recruitment a little bit further down the line. Focus on getting young players into the team. Give those young players time to get used to playing for Man United, time to get used to the Premier League if they've come from elsewhere or if they've come from the Championship. And use this year quite clearly, sign is on the door, transition season, because Manchester United aren't in Europe. Because that, I think, would be the big signal out to the media, to fans as well, that we're not in Europe this year. We have to use this as a year to build and grow, rather than a year that we're going to be competing and challenging and X, Y, and Z. So in a way, it could help Ruben Amorim, could help the squad of players, whoever's there next season. But I think United as a football club will want to be in Europe, because even Omar Barada, the CEO, told us we're budgeting to be in the Europa League every year for the foreseeable future, because we don't think we're going to be reaching the Champions League. For me, I think that was even overly enthusiastic. Good luck to him.
I've always been
Why
of the
you say
mindset.
that? They're Manchester United. They should be budgeting to be in at least one of the big European competitions.
It doesn't make sense if you're 14th in the league to be budgeting like that. It doesn't make sense if you're hemorrhaging money
If you're
money
Manchester
every single
United,
year.
you should every season at the start of the season be budgeting to be in Europe. You should. You're Manchester United. You are one of the biggest clubs in the world.
What does that mean, Darren? I don't understand. This is about budgeting. You're
It
budgeting
means,
based on
yeah,
qualification for a European competition that you're not currently good enough to qualify for. So tell me how it makes sense.
It doesn't matter what you think about. It doesn't matter what your opinion is. You are a club, a storied club with a rich history and tradition, and you should be aspiring to be in the biggest competition. That
This is
should
how I
be the
know Darren's
task of
wife does the
any given
budgeting at his
manager.
house. This is how I know Mrs. Lewis is in charge of the budget at your house. What are you talking about, Darren? What are you budgeting to go and stay in Monte Carlo this summer, are you? What do you mean? If you ain't got it,
Listen,
you ain't got it.
so wait a minute. Wait a minute. Because you said a couple of things, and I actually wasn't even going to argue with you about this. I was going to argue with you, not argue, but I was going to contend with you about Liam Delap. But I'll get to Liam Delap in a second. Manchester United, as a football club, aspire every season. The reason why they are such a big draw on TV around the world in footballing is because of their rich history. If a CEO came in, and bear in mind, a CEO sets the direction, the vision, the aspiration for any organization. If one came in and said, we're not good enough for Europe, we're not going to budget for that, he is not worth his name on the door. You should be aspiring, if you are Manchester United, for the biggest trophies, the biggest leagues, the big. You should be aiming to be number one, because that's where Manchester United have been. That's where the last 11, 12 years trying to get back to. So there is not one single shred of argument you could make to me to suggest that Manchester United CEO is wrong to be budgeting for European football.
Darren, but your comment doesn't make sense, because you literally just said Manchester United should be budgeting to be number one, but they're budgeting to be a Europa League team, so they're budgeting to be 5th or 6th. So are Manchester United a club that should be budgeting to be number one or not?
Football. I said European football.
Okay, so the point is they know they're not that good because they're budgeting to be in the Europa League. My point is and obviously they will probably agree, is that they can deal with not being in the Europa League. If they finish outside the Europa League places, their budgeting will not be so vastly skewed. I think they're very clear on the idea that they might not get to Europe next season either. I think they understand that. I'm a Man United fan. If you give me 10th next year, right now, I'll take it. I don't care what other Man United fans think. If you give me 10th, and as long as Ruben Amorim is showing that his tactics might actually work, and we start to get some of the deadwood out of that squad and start to bring in some young players and start to develop them, for next season, I will take that at Manchester United. 100%. It's the first of a building block towards future success. So you can't be going out next season thinking Man United, any Man United fans thinking that Man United should be in the top 4, dreaming. Even top 6, when you look at the teams that are in and around it at the moment, Man United will be very lucky to be there. And that's why I think it's a silly estimation from the club to pretend that they think Man United are going to be in the top 6 next year. Do you want to hear what the top 8 teams in the Premier League are at the moment? 9th for Fulham, 10th for Brighton. Okay? What are you talking about here? Bro, Brentford are 11th.
Hugh.
Man United can't get into that party. What are we talking about?
Hugh, I'm just the point. Nobody is saying they will, and I think you're framing your argument about and creating statements that nobody has made. What they have said, and you've said this yourself, they aspire to that they're going to try and do that. And what I'm saying is they're right to want to try and do that. There are no guarantees about anything.
Darren.
And we are all realistic about the state and the landscape and the many teams that have improved ahead of Manchester United at the moment. But you cannot start any given season, if you're Manchester United, accepting the status quo and saying, okay, they're all better than us, so let's just write off next season and be happy with 10th. It's just unrealistic.
Final point, Hugo. Final point.
Budgeting. I'm talking about budgeting, not aspirations. Budgeting. Budgeting is a very different thing to aspire.
Well, if
they
you're
should aspire to
budgeting,
win the
then
league.
that's an aspiration. That's what you hope to do.
Okay. Right. Okay. I'm not.
Let's move on to.
Can I just make my quick point about Liam Delap?
Go on.
Go ahead.
I just make my quick point about Liam Delap?
Go on.
I've said many times, right? Manchester United is a club. It should be the club that you get to once you've proven your ability to be there. And I think a big part of why there are so many failing strikers at Manchester United is because they're investing big money in untried talents. Liam Delap is a decent striker. He's done well at a struggling club in Ipswich. Is he Manchester United class? I think even he would be absolutely over the moon with a move to Manchester United, because I think for Manchester United to move up the table, they've got to be targeting prolific, experienced strikers.
I've got to move on to Spurs now, but my quick response to that would be, I think you are talking about Manchester United as a Manchester United that don't exist anymore. You're talking about Man United as if they were the Man United 15 years ago. Man United are still a massive institution, one of the biggest football entities on the planet. Those are facts. You don't lose that over 10 years of being crap, right? The history and the foundation is there. But the current Manchester United, I don't know if they are bigger than Liam Delap. I don't know if they are above his level. I think they're probably.
I would disagree with you. I would disagree with you big time.
I'm not saying I'm
a very good striker and a very promising striker. No. But I don't think he's ready for the level of Manchester. Because at Manchester United, you're not just playing for the shirt. You are playing with the weight of expectation on your shoulders. You are playing because the club, the fact. Everybody at Manchester United aspires to big things, except, of course, for Hugh. If you go to Manchester United, you have to have a level of consistency. And that's the key word, consistency, because Højlund showed promise, Xerxes showed promise. Neither of them had the consistency.
Why is that different to any other
guys, let me just interject here.
Because Man United are one of the biggest clubs in the world.
But they're not very good.
They are very good. That's absolutely true. But they aspire to being back to where they were, which is why you've got the CEO saying, I'm going to come in, I'm going to listen, I don't like what he's doing, but he's saying, I'm going to cut money from other areas of the club and invest it all in the team to getting back to where we are. Now, if they're going to
You've
get
nailed
back
it,
to there,
Darren.
they've got to regain the one thing that they've lost, which is consistency. And
Darren,
to
you've
have
nailed
that
it.
consistency, you've got to have a striker who's going to be able to provide it for you and cope with the pressure of playing with Manchester United. Liam Delap can't score. He's doing very well, but Ipswich is struggling to stay in the Premier League.
All right, go on, Hugh.
And
Go
you're
on,
going to
Hugh.
tell me
Last,
they're
last,
going to take
go
him
on.
out and
I
put
got
him
to
to
move on. Go on.
United?
Hugh had the last word. Go on.
We're going to move on, but let me tell you something. The reason that Man United are all in on Liam Delap is that Liam Delap are the cheapest option. And we need to get our heads around that Man United aren't just a terrible team on the field, they're a terrible team off the field. They are losing £100 million a year. So the reason Delap is number one on the list is that his wages are lower and the £30 million release clause is there. And you are not going to, and ultimately Manchester United see him as the best option for who they are right now. And that's it, Darren. They don't have the money to get what you believe to be
Listen,
Manchester
All
United
right, all right,
quality
all
no,
right, all
players.
right, all right, all right, all right,
I know
all right.
what I
I'm
know.
ending it, Darren. I'm ending it. I'm ending
I
it. I'm
know
ending it.
why
I'm
they're
ending it.
targeting him.
I'm ending it.
I'm just telling you
Let's talk.
what my
Let's talk about.
opinion of him is, and I think that
Well,
Man
we
United
agreed.
have
That's
made a
fine.
lot of mistakes so far, and I think this
Okay.
could be another one of them.
Okay. Let's move on. We haven't got to
Good
go
points,
into
though. I
Spurs
like
too
that.
much because we spoke about Spurs quite a lot last week, but they have a big tie themselves in the Europa League too, and they're currently drawing 1-1. They travel to Germany to take on Frankfurt. Start with Hugh just on them briefly. I mean, all the rhetoric around Spurs is Ange loses, he loses his job, right? If Spurs go out, he's done Friday morning. I don't know if you think that that is what will happen. But what I want to ask the two of you is, do you think Ange Postecoglu will be leaving this season regardless?
Well, firstly on the game, because I went to the first leg at White Hart Lane. Am I allowed to still call it White Hart Lane? At the Tottenham
I do.
Hotspur Stadium. Yeah, at the Tottenham Hotspur. You call it 3 Points Lane, don't you? But at the Tottenham
We
Hotspur
do, yeah,
Stadium,
yeah.
Spurs catch a lot of strays from me. I need to apologise to Spurs fans. I'm sorry. I'll try my best. Anyway, Tottenham should have won that game, actually. There was a bit of life in particular in the second half. They hit the woodwork several times. They had good control over the game. One thing I've been thinking for a long time is, once that team is full strength, looking at the other candidates in the Europa League, Tottenham have a chance. And they do have a
Yeah.
chance. Even Dejan Kulusevski was back, and he's huge for them. If he can get even just a little bit of positive form before the end of the season, if Tottenham is still in this competition, he could make a big, big difference. So they have the quality to win the Europa League, in my opinion. They absolutely do. And by the way, I'd make them favourites ahead of Manchester United because I do feel like the form of Tottenham has been based a lot around injury, I think. Okay, they've been very, very bad, but they had a long period where they had a lot of key players out. Romero's just come back for the last few games. Van der Ven back for the last few games. Quite a few players, a doggy, Porro, even the goalkeeper, Vicario, that's your whole defensive unit back from injury. The midfield looks stronger. Madison's back in there. Solanke's back up front. I think he's got a knock as well, but I think they could have enough if they get through this game. Unfortunately, they didn't put the tie to bed in the first leg, and no one really wants to go away to Frankfurt. Frankfurt showed in that first leg that they have a lot of European nous. When the other team got on top of them, they did it several times, just take the sting out of the game, release the pressure on them. That's what experienced European sides do, and they obviously are that, particularly in this competition. So I do think it will be tricky for Ange. I didn't think he was going to get sacked before the end of the season until I saw the defeat against Wolves and some of the reaction to it, and really, almost unanimously now, fans starting to come around to the idea that he will probably go. So I wouldn't get rid of him, but I also think that he hasn't shown enough to actually stay managing a club as big as Tottenham Hotspur, even if he did stay in the Premier League in his 2 seasons. I think he might end up as a manager of Leicester City or Southampton. I'll be perfectly honest. And I actually think that, by the way, that one of those 2 jobs might be a very good job for him. I think he's become obsessed with proving to the world and proving to everyone in the Premier League that as an Australian coach, he deserves to be in the Premier League. And as someone that's come through Japan and come through coaching in Scotland, come through coaching in Australia, that he deserves to be at the top table of Premier League football as much as anyone else. and he's lost sight of his number one responsibility, which is winning football matches. And I think that will ultimately cost him his position. Once the fans aren't on your side at Tottenham, I don't think there's any way back. And Daniel Levy, as much as he doesn't listen to the fans when it comes to recruitment and stuff like that, he usually listens when they're calling for a manager to go. So he has to win the Europa League, in my opinion, to keep his job. I think he can do it. I'd make them favourites probably to go through this tie as well.
Darren?
I'm worried for them in this tie. They've only won 2 of their last 9 games. Frankfurt have won 4 of their last 6, and they're in better form. They're at home. They've got more confidence. I think Hugh makes a good point. Listen, I'm a Postecoglu fan. I'll say it with chest. And so I hate, in some cases, the snobbery that exists around him, suggesting that what he's done so far isn't good enough for the Premier League. And also the idea that he's naive. He wants to play attacking football. He loves to play attacking football. It hasn't worked for him. I take the argument that maybe it's cost some of the injuries that he's had so far this season. But I said last week, I'll say it again, a good manager can have bad results across a campaign. I think if he were to win the Europa League, then he would keep his job. If he were to lose the Europa League, I think that the clamour for him to go will grow. The problem with that clamour, right, is that, like I said, how often do you keep changing managers at a football club before you start to realise that actually there might be other issues afoot? I think they need to go through the difficult moments as a club to come out the other side. And with any luck for him, I think he just deserves some luck. With any luck, things will go his way and he'll hold on to his job, because I think he's a good manager and I think he'll go on to prove that at Tottenham Hotspur.
Let's move on to Arsenal. They travel to the Bernabeu this week with a 3-goal lead in their back pocket. I've heard a lot of the chatter around how Arsenal should approach this second leg, and it generally seems to be that Arsenal can't sit back, Arsenal can't go there being defensive, Arsenal have to have the same approach that they took in the first leg. They have to try and score a goal and just really kill the tie off early. I disagree. I understand why people are saying that, and I don't think that's a bad way to go about it. My view is that Arsenal are in the fortunate position to go there with a 3-goal lead. Arsenal are going to play to their strengths. Arsenal's strengths are defense before attack. We are a better defending team, better defensive unit than we are attacking team with no strikers in the team. So my view, and I'd love to get the both of your views on approach. My view would be to try and frustrate them for the first third of the game. The first half an hour, just try and get Madrid to break us down, force them to cross. We're very good in the air. They're not particularly great in the air. Cutting out to Bellingham scoring 2 headers at the back post in the first 20 minutes. But I think we've got to play to our strengths. And I think the longer the game goes on with Madrid trailing, the more gaps open, the more they push forward, the more risks they take, allowing Arsenal to then try and hit them on the counter and take advantage. If they were to collapse, it would be one of the most embarrassing collapses of all time. The internet will literally collapse if Arsenal were to concede a 3-goal lead and go out of the Champions League. But Darren, start with you. A, what's the approach you think Arsenal should take going into this game? And B, what would the consequences be should they blow it?
Well, first of all, I don't think there should be consequences if they were to blow this lead. Real Madrid have won the Champions League 6 times in the last 11 seasons. There have been big comebacks before in the Champions League. Let's not kid ourselves. And Real Madrid would be at home as well. There's a lot of mitigating circumstances when Arsenal was 3-0 up. I don't actually have any concerns around Arsenal going into this tie. They've only conceded 6 times so far in this season's Champions League. Defending is what they do, which is why they've got the best defence in the Premier League at the moment as well. And it's the reason why when lots of people maybe criticise Arteta for focusing too much on defence and not attack, he's been vindicated now, because even though they don't have Gabriel, they still do have a really good, strong, solid defensive base to be able to go and approach this game. And I think the way they should approach it is that they're in control of the tie, and they should believe that. They silenced Real Madrid at their own place, and they can go to the Bernabeu and do it again. And there have been other teams domestically that have managed to keep out Real Madrid so far this season. So it would not be a unique achievement if they were to do it. Real Madrid have to commit. They have to commit, because defeat for them is not an option. I think it would be the earliest they've gone out of the competition for 21 years if they were to go out at this stage. So all of the pressure is on them. I don't think any of the pressure now is on Arsenal. They can, listen, now that they've got the free kick ability of Declan Rice, they know that they can keep it tight, maybe play on the counter. If they were to get anything in and around the Real Madrid box, then it would be the Spaniards who would be most concerned, rather than Arteta, Arsenal and the English. I think they're going to go through.
Hugh, I don't know if you've seen, Hugh, some of the memes going around. Madrid are talking about putting on the roof for this game. And the memes are going around saying, well, you can put the roof on, but we all know that rice cooks better when the lid's on. I found that one quite funny, that one. So first of all, from you, approach. And secondly, I used the word consequence in my question there, Hugh, because I take Darren's point. I mean, if Arsenal lose, there's going to be no sacking of Arteta. But I mean, I'm looking to next season and the contract renewals that hopefully will come with the likes of Saliba and Saka in particular. If they were to lose this game, are the consequences kind of more longer standing, that you lose the belief potentially from the likes of Bukayo Saka and William Saliba that actually this club really can't go at the top table and get it done?
Firstly, on those two players, if their agents are worth their salt, they'll have decent release clauses in the next contract. I think they'll extend, but I think there will be clauses regarding Champions League qualification or getting to a certain point in the Champions League, and there'll be certain triggers if you're outside the Champions League, etc., etc. So there'll be ways of them getting out of the contract if they do renew, but I think they would have seen enough already to make them think the club's moving in the right direction. Particularly Saka. Saliba might have bigger dreams, but I think Saka certainly would want to stay with Arsenal. In terms of the approach to the game, we're already overthinking it. I can't remember the last time Arsenal conceded 4 goals, home or away. So the truth is they just have to be themselves. And you can worry about changing tactically, and they can talk about it in different situations during the game, but you have a 3-goal lead. You don't have to entertain anyone. Everyone that's watching at home can be bored, brainless if they want to. It can be a stubborn 0-0. You walk off, you can lose 2-0. Not saying that they're going to want to do that, but remember, just be yourself. And remember that Real Madrid came out all guns blazing with their best team, and you beat them 3-0 last week. So you've already shown that you've got the quality with the probably similar 11 players to beat the team that you're up against. So, for me, I wouldn't be overthinking it too much. Oh, should he be overly defensive? Put 11 players behind the ball. That's not what Arsenal do every game. So why are we doing it now? We've got a 3-goal lead. Let's do what works for us. And what works for us is just to play our natural game. All I'll say is that the approach might be, let's not make any silly errors. So you might see Arsenal just going long a little bit more often, keeping it out of the danger areas a little bit more often. And even in attacking areas, players taking a little bit less risk. So you might see a player dribbling down towards the corner where you might want them to take their player on and drive into the box and get a shot away, things like that. So we might see a safer performance from Arsenal. But yeah, I think they're going to be going through, and I think it says a lot about the improvements that Arteta has made as a coach in Europe in particular. I think what cost them against Bayern Munich, I thought they were vastly the better team over the course of the season than Bayern Munich, but what cost them were those errors against Munich, but also I think a sense that, oh my word, we're playing against a huge team on a big stage, and for many of those players, it was their first time. Thankfully, they've learned quickly, and I expect them to go through. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Arsenal in the Champions League final. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
We won't do Villa because I think the consequences for them getting knocked out are less than they are for Tottenham, United, and Arsenal. And they're currently trading. So the expectation is they probably will get knocked out. In a word, and I mean one word, United, Leon, who wins? Or who goes through, I say.
Leon.
You?
Leon on pens, probably. 1-1 draw.
Okay, stick with you. Tottenham, Frankfurt, who goes through?
Frankfurt, to be
Aaron?
honest.
Frankfurt.
I mean, I'm trying to wrap this up, guys. Come on, help me out here. I'm trying to move on. Smart words.
Let me just say very quickly, more than one word though, on Chelsea and Maresca, they're going to go through in the Conference League against Legia Warsaw, 2-goal lead, no worries about that. But just as you were asking about the futures of other managers a few moments ago, I think that draw with Ipswich at the weekend and his seeming desire to prioritise the Conference League, despite the fact none of the club's fans truly care about winning that competition. They care a lot more about being in the Champions League. I think now if he misses out on Champions League, his job will be gone. So big mistakes made by him over the last 5 or 6 games. Yeah, very critical in my opinion, but they are going to be going through anyway.
Back to Darren on Tottenham, Frankfurt. One word.
He said Frankfurt, man. Pay attention.
Oh, did he? Sorry, I missed that. And Real, Arsenal.
Arsenal, baby.
I think Real Madrid.
Oh, wow.
No,
all right, that's what I need. That's all I need. That's all I need. Can anybody see Villa overturning their deficit? Yes or no?
No.
Yeah, I could.
I think Villa Park will be. I think that will have the best game of the week of all the English teams. I think that's going to be rocking. That'll be the most fun. But I do think PSG will end up progressing. All right, they're going to move on now to have a chat about Big Brother and where we think that program lies in the landscape of British culture / television. Okay, it's 2025, not 2002. Big Brother is still a thing on British television. I've not seen the program for about 15 years, but it seems to have a bit of a revival. And a couple of things I want to discuss with you guys about Celebrity Big Brother. First of all, your column that you've written, Darren, about an individual who was evicted this week from it, but also about, of all the reality TV programs, and I don't want to be too highfalutin or too dismissive of trashy TV, because I think we all watch television programs that other people will think is nonsense, and I don't want to get too snobby about it. It's a popular show, whatever. But I want to talk about why we still think it's a popular show, because whereas other reality TV programs, I see the merits in why they are engaging, I'm struggling to now see why in this day and age, seeing 15 D-list celebrities, the psychological experiment of seeing 15 D-list celebrities in a room for 24 hours or in a house for 24 hours, why that's still interesting or engaging. So let's start with that. I'll come to you, Hugh. I don't know if you've been watching the latest Celebrity Big Brother, but I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. The kind of jungle element of that, I think, is, and navigating that, I think that is still engaging and still interesting and still challenging. We know the Pop the Balloon series, that, there's a dating love element. I put love in inverted commas there. Gogglebox. I think we can all relate to that to some degree, because, we all watch certain programs and chat with our brethren or our missus and have a laugh and whatever it may be. Why do you think Celebrity Big Brother still has the appeal that it seems to have?
People are bored. They're obviously, I don't know, disconnected from, Some people like brainless nonsense. I don't know. But I don't know what the interest is. I haven't been watching it, obviously. I haven't watched it. I don't even know if it's been on since I was a kid, but I haven't been watching it. I saw the two incidents. I thought it was really poor Mickey Rourke's treatment of Jojo Siwa. I wish he would have been called out in a more, I'll say, aggressive way, but
Yeah,
I don't like the kind of, oh, he's from a different generation. Oh, what year
agree,
was he born in? Oh, he's a bit of
agree,
a dinosaur kind of stuff.
agree.
I think you need to be strong with people like that. It doesn't matter how old they are, by the way. And we've got people like this in our families. Like, sometimes people say something in your family and they're 75 years old, they're 80 years old. You got to be firm with people still. I say this to my dad, I say it to other elder members of my family. You don't want to be a person from the past living in today. I never want to be that person. I talk about it all the time. I don't work in an industry related to technology or AI, but I often say, I need to start understanding AI and future technologies because I don't want to be a person in the future who's from the past. Do you know what I mean? And I
Sorry,
don't want
Hugh.
to be that guy.
Sorry, Hugh. Can I just give the viewers, listeners, context as to what we're talking about? So, Mickey Rourke, the Hollywood star, is one of the was one of the members of the cast in the current Celebrity Big Brother house. He was evicted after 3 or 4 days after a couple of warnings due to his conduct in the Celebrity Big Brother house. He made some derogatory comments to one of the other celebrities who is gay. He was seen, I believe, luring and leering even over the presenter when he went into the house. And his general conduct does befit, as Hugh was saying there, a man that gets a pass in this day and age of yesteryear with certain language. I want to just read a very, very short paragraph, guys, to something that Marvin Harrison, um, the racial advocate and founder of Dope Black Dads, wrote on LinkedIn on this week. Mickey Rourke's conduct on Celebrity Big Brother is emblematic of a deeply entrenched cultural problem. The habitual excusing of male misconduct, particularly when it's directed at women. His inappropriate behavior towards AJ Adudu, the use of a slur against Jojo Siwa, and the mockery of Patsy Palmer's cooking were not isolated incidents, they were a pattern of disrespect that were repeatedly overlooked. Despite multiple warnings, Rourke remained in the house. It was only when he directed aggression towards a man, Chris Hughes, that the producers acted and removed him. And he goes on further than that. I've not been watching Celebrity Big Brother. It comes up on my feed. I work in the news, so I have to keep an eye on this to some degree. Darren, you wrote an article on Mickey Rourke with a different angle, but just give me your thoughts, first of all, on Big Brother's place in British television society, if you want to frame it that way, but also just to tap into kind of what you wrote in the Mirror this week.
Big Brother is cheap, lazy TV. It's car crash TV very often. It keeps getting dropped. It was dropped by Channel 4 and Channel 5, and then keeps getting picked up again because it's easy viewers, it's easy money. There is a fascination within British culture of or at seeing, as Hugh said, um, people going into a house and wondering what they're going to do. How people can spend their time watching that is beyond me. And I speak as somebody who watched in the early days out of fascination, like everybody else. But surely, I would have thought the fascination would have worn off. And when I wrote my piece, a friend of mine said to me, "Is Big Brother still on? Is that still a thing?" And he was as incredulous as I was. I just listen. Marvin makes a number of good points in his piece, and that goes without saying. But I have a bigger issue, which is that the people who do these reality TV shows, they act as though they're doing everyone a great service by finally kicking out the person who has offended so many other people, when the facts are that they brought them in to do exactly the kind of thing they're doing at the moment. And we're kidding ourselves if we think any different. When they invest such huge amounts of money in people like Mickey Rourke, they're hoping that he is going to act according to type. And they're hoping that he's going to generate the column inches, the news bulletin time, the website traffic on both sides of the Atlantic, and even the time we are spending here debating him. Because what that does is it says to people, I wonder what all the fuss is about. Let me go and take a look. They want to attract viewers. So the idea that Big Brother is finally acting and the good of the people in the house or the good of the people who are watching on TV, it's nonsense. And that's a big problem in more broad terms for reality TV. They deliberately attract people who are controversial, who are offensive. I'm a Celebrity who's been doing it for years. Nigel Farage, Hancock, people that people don't like, or maybe there is split opinion about, I should say.
But you say, sorry to cut you there.
Because they know that it's going to create. Sorry, say again.
I was saying, you say that people don't like these people, but ITV, Channel 5, Channel 4, they wouldn't be spending the vast sums of money they're spending in getting these people into these games if there wasn't a public interest in these types of people. I do find it interesting that
you're right.
he's been kicked out. Go on.
You're right, because I actually corrected myself almost immediately and said people that there was actually split opinion about. Not that they don't like. There was split opinion about these people. But for the makers of reality TV shows, they know if they go out and get these people, they're gonna make the headlines. They're hoping they do act according to type. I've seen a million news stories where once a controversial lightning rod type figure is acquired for a reality TV show, you hear from a source saying, we expect them to do this, that, and the other. If they act according to the way we think they would, this should be explosive television. They know what they're doing. So I can't sit here and get exercised about the behavior of Mickey Rourke. You know what you're getting when you attract somebody that, by his own admission, says that his career is in the toilet and he's not getting A-list movies because people don't want to work with him. You know what you're getting. Please, I can't colour me surprised.
We can move on. I think my final point is something we've discussed on this pod several times. It's the laziness of television. And I think Big Brother is just an example of that. That I just think it's TV just being lazy. I mean, Gladiator is another example of that. The difference between Gladiator and Big Brother is Gladiator is inoffensive. Like, I think it's lazy to bring it back, but it's inoffensive, harmless TV. Whereas I think Big Brother, I don't think is inoffensive. It's not harmless. There are consequences to having certain people on mainstream TV. Let's move finally now on something a bit more light.
That's going to be a segue to your next point, Jordan. I'll make a point that's a segue to your next subject.
Go on.
I think TV mainstream TV is lazy because they're worried people are not watching it anymore. They're worried that people are looking at the internet much more, and there are lots of other things far more creative, far more appropriate to younger audiences that people are going elsewhere to watch. So instead of trying to invest in money in things that they're worried people aren't going to be interested in, they throw up this, when actually, to be fair to the BBC and to Netflix, they are making productions that are interesting, that have been engaging, and mainstream TV can still do this, but it doesn't want to.
Okay. Usher's been in town. He's been hot news.
Smooth
Everyone's
segue.
Every fella with a woman has been quaking in their boots whilst Usher's been in the capital of our country here. He's here touring. He's done quite a few dates from what I've seen as well. This isn't like some 2-3 date thing. He's done like 8-9 dates, I think. Fair play to him. He's done quite well. The concert, from what I've heard, generally has been very positive. A couple of people I've spoken to weren't overly impressed with his performance and his gig. But generally, I've heard nothing but good things about Usher. Cards on the table. I'm not an Usher fan. I never have been an Usher fan, but that's just kind of where I stand. But what I want to have a chat to
Suspect.
you guys about. Who, me?
Suspect behavior.
Me or
What
him?
do you mean you're not an Usher fan? What do you mean you're
Yeah,
not an
I've
Usher fan?
never
You're telling
been.
me in
Listen,
our
the
age
guy.
group you're not an Usher fan? You
You know
are
what?
a
Even at
hater,
school,
Jordan.
let me
You
tell
are
you.
a
Let me tell
hater.
you. Let me tell you. At school, everyone called me a hater as well. Because when Usher came out, look, he had an onion head. First of all, I hate. He's grown into his head a little bit now, but he had an onion head, right? And I find that annoying. First of all,
See?
he's got some hits, no doubt. The guy's got some hits, but some of his hits for me, I think, are overrated. Overrated. But bringing it to
Okay,
the
let's name
present
songs. Let's
day,
name songs. No. I want to hear this. Let's get it all cards on the table. Which tunes are
songs
overrated?
that I like, the songs that I
No.
like.
Overrated. Overrated. You said some songs
Um,
are overrated.
I mean, name me some, and I'll tell you if it's overrated. What is
Burn.
hits?
Let's start with Burn.
Good tune. It's a good tune. It's a
Yeah.
good tune.
You remind me.
Pop your
That's
collar.
a very good tune.
Yeah. You make me
You make me
wanna.
wanna. Yes, it's all
Big
right.
tune, Jordan. What are we talking about here?
These are for me. These are good tunes that I tap my finger to. But everyone,
Nice and slow.
these are R&B Hall of Fame tunes. Like, no, they're not. 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 No,
I
they're
just
not.
wanted everyone to
But
know what a
anyway,
hater you were. Go ahead.
maybe I am. Maybe I am. But bringing it to the present day, I'm actually going to defend Usher to some degree because me and Darren disagree on his current conduct. For those that don't know, during his performances here in the UK, he does this thing. He's been doing it for about 2 years now, even in the States. He goes into the crowd, he finds the women, he gets the cherries out, and he does this thing where, you know, he tempts the cherries into the mouths of these ladies, baying ladies, waiting, thirsting to touch with their tongue the bottoms of these cherries in a bowl. And I think that what he's doing is nothing different to what other pop star, megastar, heartthrobs have done. He's come over here, women love him, he's playing with the women, they're cool. My interest is in with the partners of the women and thinking about what they feel like and what they can or can't allow. So, as two people with partners, my question to you both is, where is the line in regards to what your partner can do when going to these concerts and seeing figures such as Usher? I don't see any problem with my partner going to see her favorite sex symbol heartthrob and having a good night. I'm not so sure I'm happy with her being on camera, tongue out, taking these cherries in her mouth. Darren, you seem to think that Usher's the problem here. I think it's the ladies.
Sorry, do you want us to answer the first point though? Whether we care or where the line is or what?
Let's start with the line. Where is
Before
the
we talk
line?
about whether Usher whose fault it is, I mean, Darren,
Let's
you can
start with
go
the line.
first. I can go.
Let's
Yeah,
start with the line.
she can do what she wants. My partner, she can do what she wants. I'm one of those guys. She's like asking me when she comes home from a night out with her friends why I'm not asking her what she got up to. I'm just like, "Do you have a good time?"
Okay.
She's like, "Yeah," and then I'm just like, "Okay, cool."
He's watching the EFL. He's like, yeah. I'm watching Swansea v Luton. Just you had a good night. Great.
She's
Yeah.
like,
See you later.
"Don't you want to know where we went?" I'm like, "Go on then. Where'd you go?" That's me, innit? So, no, listen. I don't think you should control your partner. Firstly, I don't think it's any man's position. I think we all know that you can set boundaries as a partner. Fine, and everyone's allowed to have boundaries, but I don't think you can say to your partner before she leaves the door, you can only do X and Y, or you can't do X and Y. Like, okay, there's consequences to your partner breaking the boundaries, but they're free to do what they want. And if they do something that they know that you would probably find unacceptable, then obviously there's consequences, and you're allowed to voice your disapproval or concern or whatever. But I don't think it's fair to say before your partner leaves the house, you need to act like X and Y and da 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 da. I think people choose partners where it's a reciprocal thing. You know what you're getting in terms of respectful behavior from your partner, which is why you chose them to begin with and why they chose you. So I think any of those women who are doing those things, I think there's an understanding that they know their partner would be okay with it. I think implicitly they know that their partner would be okay with it. And I think the ones that probably shy away from letting Usher dangle the cherries in their mouth, know their partners may be uncomfortable with it. So I don't think it's even our job to be telling people, what they should and shouldn't expect from their partner when they go through the door or anything like that. I don't I'm uncomfortable generally with that concept. Darren?
Sorry, Darren. Before you come in, I think this links quite well to the discussion we had last week when we spoke about art and comedy. And I think when you step into the arena of an Usher concert, there's a certain level of understanding and accepting of what's coming your way. When you go to an Usher concert, if you've got front row seats or front row tickets, there's a high probability he's coming around with the cherries. So if you're my girl and you're going, go on.
Can I just state for the record, though, we had a very funny episode in one of my WhatsApp groups with my school friends last week when one of the boys put in the group, boys, I've got a link, like £115 golden circle Usher, like who wants to go? And I was like, you want to go to Usher with the boys? And he was like, yeah, man, it's Usher, da 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 da. And I was like, he goes, why? Have you heard that it's a terrible concert? He had no clue that it was going to be all of this stuff around the ladies and stuff like that. I said, no, everyone I know said it's good. So he's gone, happy now, paid his money. None of us went with him, obviously. He went with his family members. Afterwards, he was like, oh, the concert was hype, man. We were so close to the front. We saw everything, but he's like, it got a bit. So he had no clue. So I'm just pointing out, some people have no idea what happens in that concert.
True. Darren, thoughts?
Well, it's an interesting perspective because this whole debate, part of what you and I argued with beforehand, was more my question, which is how far is too far, rather than who should be allowing partners to do what. Because partners have their own minds and everybody is free to do what they want to do.
Sorry, I want to be sorry, Dan, to cut you. I want to be just clear. Sorry, I'll let you finish because you made the point as well. I'm not saying that I'm telling my partner when you leave the front door, you can do X, you can't do Y. I'm not advocating men tell their woman what they can and can't do. I think my point is more to Hugh's second point, which is regarding boundaries. You can go to the concert and do what you want, but just know you're doing it with the boundaries as your partner that I lay out for us as a couple. Or we have laid out for ourselves as a couple. So I want to be clear. I'm not saying I control my partner. You can do what you want, but do it knowing what I do and don't like. Bear that in mind.
Is that your disclaimer to make sure that they don't come for you on social media? No, because I think the actual debate is how far is too far. And that's really a more general conversation rather than ascribing blame or boundaries, control, or anything on anybody. Because as we've seen, there have been partners who have been upset at the conduct of Usher. And if you're in a certain situation where, because of the what's the word I'm looking for? You mentioned the cherries. You mentioned the moving into the personal space of women who go to. Well, that is the conversation. That is the conversation, not what your partner should and shouldn't be doing. That's a separate thing. And it also plays into what you were saying about art, because obviously, as you said, if you go into an arena, then there is that expectation that when you go there, you are going to see something that plays into the kind of thing you expect. But if you, for example, were taken by the hand on stage by Cardi B at one of her performances, and Cardi was with you the way that Usher is with so many of the ladies, would your partner be okay with that?
Well, first of all,
why are you acting like people are getting forced? They're not getting forced to get involved.
First of all, she'd have to walk very far to the back of the arena to take my hand, because I wouldn't be anywhere. I wouldn't be anywhere near the front row. That's the first thing. Second of all, if I was if I was at a gig and a lady performer wanted to bring me on stage to gyrate on me and grind on me and put her chest in my face and all this sort of stuff, I'm not the sort of person. I'm not a prude. I'm far from a prude, but it's not the sort of thing that I would find particularly fun and engaging, especially in that particular environment. So I would be declining that that offer, if you will. Regarding my partner, she wouldn't. She, I would also be. I'll be declining, also knowing the person that I'm with wouldn't be massively comfortable with seeing her boyfriend on stage grinding with Cardi B, albeit innocently. It's part of a show. I'm not going to be running off with Cardi B to marry her anytime soon, but I would decline because I would be also aware that my partner, there's a that word boundaries. There's a boundary of this isn't how we carry on. This is not what we're about or how we conduct
So,
ourselves.
so in many respects, you're answering that question of how far is too far, because that's the question. It's a more broad, it's a more general question, and it's for individual
You can't
couples to
you can't
decide
answer it. Yeah, you
based
can't
on
answer it.
the parameters of their relationship. But I just know, and I'm sure, for a lot of the people going, first of all, I would imagine a lot of the people, let's talk in terms of the women who are there. A lot of them would be single, but I've got friends who've gone as a couple to those relationships, and I know that if and Usher, because we've seen performers for decades, go into crowds and grab people and whatnot. But as a couple, if you go in there and you're the wife or you're the husband, if, for example, it was a female performer, you know what your boundaries are. You know what is too far. You know what crosses the line. I think we're moving into an era now where maybe that line is a bit more fluid than it used to be.
So Darren, you wake up in the morning. We know you like to scroll on the internet and watch videos of squirrels swimming in people's swimming pools and nonsense like that. But you see the video. Mrs. Lewis has gone to the Usher concert, and bam, there she is on the 50-foot screen. Usher's got the cherries dangling. we, what are you gonna say? What are you gonna say to Mrs. Lewis? Let's talk us through it.
Well, again, Mrs. Lewis falls into the category of she knows where that boundary is. She knows where they
Wit.
lie. So, and as do I should say. We both know where those boundaries lie, so that wouldn't be the case.
So here's a last question because we've got a wrap. Do you think the profile of the guy in this example plays a role? So what I mean by that is, because we work in the media, we're on TV, we're on radio, we're on podcasts, the perception that other people are going to see big Darren Lewis, what that was his missus, as opposed to John, who's a plumber who no one knows. Do you think that, I guess the pride, I'm asking about pride, do you think that plays a role in whether said man, in this case the partner, would be comfortable with it or
No,
not? To get what I'm
I
saying?
don't think it makes any difference. I do
No.
hear what you're saying. I don't think it makes any difference. I just think, and that's why I wanted the question to be broad, because I think it applies to everybody. If you pay your ticket to go to a concert, it's for you as people to determine how far is too far. And I know over time, over decades, it has been the case. If you think about some of the other examples of, I don't know, Chippendales and whatnot, and they grab
But that's why I
people
find
on
it weird that
stage and
you.
do all
But that's why I find it weird that
that.
you make
That's
the
different.
argument, Darren. Sorry to interrupt, but I find it weird that you make the argument, and you're almost trying to make it a broad
Which
question mark
argument?
about
Which
this
argument, Hugh?
question mark that it's the question mark, the question that it's general, the idea that it's general when it's clearly not general. It's very, very individual. Every single couple has their own boundaries, has their own lines, and that's it. Some people, their husband goes off to the strip club, they don't care. Goes to the massage parlor, they don't care. Other people obviously do care. So I don't
No,
understand why
I
we're
think you're
asking the question when
misunderstanding
it's
me.
it's individual.
I think you're misunderstanding me. When I say broad, I mean it isn't. I think your first answer was, would I let my wife or would the wife let her husband? I'm not asking any of those questions because, as has been rightly established, individuals are free to do what they want. What I'm saying is, in relation to concerts like the Usher concert, which has really attracted its own notoriety. Every time you say to someone, I'm going to an Usher concert, they're always like, oh, watch out for your wife or watch out for your husband if it's Cardi B. What I'm saying is, how far is too far? It's a much more broad, general question rather than trying
Sorry,
to.
how far is too far at a
Yeah, I don't.
concert? Very
Yes.
Yeah, how far can it
specific.
go? How far can it go?
No, but here's the thing, and this is the point, right? Like, it depends what event you've bought a ticket for, doesn't it? The line is different again at all of these events. Usher's probably, he could probably go further. I didn't see him gyrating on anyone's wife or anything like that. Maybe he was. I didn't see it. You know, maybe that would be over the line. For example, feeding a cherry. There's a barrier between them. Who's the one that we spoke? Jordan, you had a thing before. Was it Chris Brown? Who was the person that was getting women on the stage with him?
No, it was Omale, the Afrobeat star. Omale
Oh
was the
yeah,
one
yeah,
that went
yeah,
viral
yeah,
6 months ago.
yeah. So
Chris Brown too, though.
that's that. But again, it's like that. There was obviously a different line at that concert. I don't know. People that buy the ticket after they've seen that, maybe they expect that kind of treatment. I don't know. You know, if your wife goes off to Chocolate City or Magic Mike or something like that, then you know, there's obviously another line in that environment.
Let's wrap it there. But let us know if you've
just one more point, very quickly. The whole thing around how far do you go and how far is too far is because the kind of thing that was acceptable in terms of boundaries 20 years ago, the world has changed now quite considerably. But also, it isn't about who dictates what to whom. How far is too far also relates to what those boundaries are for ourselves as well. And it's the reason why I've been fascinated to see a lot of the stuff that, a lot of the videos that have come out of that concert, Chris Brown. To be fair, Cardi, I haven't really seen too much of her going into the audience and taking people out, even though we've been using her as an example. But there have been examples, of course. But
Cardi B's watching this podcast and thinking to myself, what did I do?
Yes. What's it got to do with it?
I'm catching strays. Anyway, listen, let's wrap it there. If you lost your wife to Keith Sweat in 1995 at a concert, let us know in the comments. As I mentioned at the top of the show there, please get involved. It only takes 5 seconds. Leave us a comment. Do you watch Big Brother? If so, why? I'm really interested to know what you get from that. I get the escapism element, but I need a bit more than that. Who do you think will get through of the English teams or the British teams in Europe this week? And have you been to Usher's concert? And is it all just a bit of harmless fun? Or do you see homes being wrecked as a consequence of his action? Let us know. We're across all social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, X, here on YouTube as well. Subscribe, share, leave us a review if you check us out on one of the Acast platforms. Till next week, take care. Peace.